Who does this old woman think she is, sitting in a suite that costs more per night than most people earn in a month? The front desk manager crossed his arms. His voice didn't lower. He wanted the lobby to hear. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move. This check-in queue is for Platinum Reserve guests only." She held up her key card, the one the reservations team had sent by courier 3 days ago. "I have a reservation, room 1401. He looked at her the way people look at a wet umbrella left in the wrong place. At her coat, good wool, but old. At her hands, weathered, spotted with age. At her face, 72 years old and not trying to hide a single one of them. That room is part of our executive collection. Perhaps there's been a confusion with the booking. Our front desk assistant can help you find something more appropriate in the standard wing." He said more appropriate, the way people say more affordable when they don't want to say what they actually mean. The woman standing behind him, a young concierge named Priya, 3 weeks into the job, felt her stomach drop. She stared at her keyboard and didn't move. The lobby of the Harrington Grand in downtown Toronto was doing what lobbies like this always do on a Friday evening. Buzzing. Couples in business attire. A film crew checking in near the far elevators. The low hum of a piano from the lounge 2 floors above. Everyone moving with the confidence of people who believed this place was made for them. Nobody looked at her twice. Her name was Constance Aldridge. She was standing at the front desk of a hotel she had owned for 11 years. She didn't say that yet. She set her travel bag, a battered dark green canvas holdall, the kind that looks like it has been somewhere and isn't trying to impress anyone, on the marble counter and opened the front pocket. "The booking reference," she said quietly, "is under Aldridge. I made it through the standard portal. I did not ask for an upgrade, or an escort, or any special treatment. I would simply like to check in." His badge said Vincent, pursed his lips. He typed something. He typed it the way people type when they're looking for a reason to say no. "I see a reservation here, yes. But I'm not able to verify the payment method on file, and our policy for the executive collection requires." The card on file is a Visa ending in 4471. It was charged in full when the booking was confirmed. 3 weeks ago. Vincent's jaw tightened. She had answered too quickly. He didn't like that. "I understand you feel that. I don't feel anything yet," Constance said. "I'm asking to check in. That's all." Behind her, a man in an expensive jacket made a small noise of impatience. Vincent glanced at him. His expression shifted immediately. Open, apologetic, professional. "Sir, I'll be with you in just one moment." Then back to Constance, and the warmth disappeared like someone had switched off a lamp. "If you'll step aside to the assistant's desk, someone will help clarify your reservation." Constance looked at him for a long moment. "Steady. The way you look at something you've already made a decision about." She stepped aside. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She sat down in one of the low chairs near the window, pulled a small notebook from her bag, spiral-bound, half filled with handwriting that moved quickly across the page, uncapped a pen, and began to write. With the expensive jacket sailed through check-in in under 2 minutes. Vincent smiled the entire time. "Let me take you back 4 hours. Constance Aldridge had been sitting at her kitchen table in Oakville when her daughter called for the 3rd time that morning. "Mum, you don't have to do this one yourself." "I know I don't have to. Send Marcus. Send anyone. That's literally what they're there for." Constance poured her second cup of tea. Loose leaf, steeped exactly 4 minutes, the way she'd been making it since before her daughter was born, and looked out the window at the November garden. Everything stripped back. The dogwood her late husband had planted 26 years ago was bare, its branches fine as pencil lines against the gray sky. "I'll be back Sunday," she said. Her daughter, Helen, made a sound that was equal parts love and exasperation. "You always say that. And I'm always back Sunday." What Constance didn't explain, what she never explained, was why she still did these visits herself. 4 times a year, she checked into one of the Aldridge Group's properties as an anonymous guest. No advance notice to management, no company car, no assistant deals, just a booking made through the public portal under her own name, with a bag she'd owned since the 90s, arriving the same way any ordinary guest would arrive. Her board called it a quality audit, or she called it paying attention. The Aldridge Group owned 7 boutique hotels across Ontario and British Columbia. Constance had built the first one, a converted textile warehouse in Hamilton, with her husband David in 1989. They had $40,000, a contractor who worked weekends, and a shared conviction that a hotel should feel like a place someone actually wanted to be. David died 9 years ago. The group had grown to 7 properties without him, though she still talked through every major decision with his photograph on her desk. She was 72 years old. She had white hair she wore short and simply at her tête. She owned 2 good coats, one for ceremony, one for travel, and she could tell within about 40 minutes of walking through a lobby whether a management team was running a hotel or performing the idea of one. Tonight, she was walking into the Harrington Grand, which the Aldridge Group had acquired 18 months ago after its previous ownership collapsed under debt. She had a file on the incoming general manager, a man named Vincent Colworth, who had transferred from a property in Calgary with a strong revenue record, and 3 staff feedback forms that described him language, carefully chosen not to sound like a complaint, as selective in his attentiveness. She had underlined that phrase. She had taken the train from Oakville to Union Station. Here's her. Walked through the concourse pulling her green holdall. They bought a coffee from a kiosk near the Bay Street exit, thanked the woman by name because she always read name tags, and arrived at the Harrington Grand at 6:14 p.m. She had been at the assistant's desk for 11 minutes when she heard the door from the staff corridor open. The man who came through it was not Vincent. He was younger, mid-30s, dark blazer, no tie, moving quickly with the expression of someone who has just been told something that made their afternoon considerably more complicated. His name tag said Daniel, guest experience. He saw her sitting by the window and stopped. Not a polite stop, a full stop, the kind where something clicks behind a person's eyes. Daniel Chen had worked for the Aldridge Group for 4 years. He had attended the annual staff development conference in Whistler the previous March. He had sat in the 4th row for the opening address, close enough to read the text on the projected slides, and the woman, who had delivered that address for 40 minutes. Without notes, without a podium, with the kind of quiet authority that fills a room from the front row to the back, had introduced herself with a single line. My name is Constance Aldridge. I started this company in a building that didn't have working heat for its first winter. I'm going to talk to you about what it means to take care of people. He was looking at her right now. His face did a thing that faces do when the mind catches up 2 seconds after the body. He took 3 steps toward her. Then he turned around and walked, with controlled urgency, back through the staff corridor door. He found Vincent at the reservations desk, reviewing occupancy reports with the calm of a man who had forgotten there was an old woman sitting by the window. Daniel kept his voice level, the guest at the assistant's desk. Vincent didn't look up. What about her? Do you know who she is? A walk-in, possibly confused about her booking category. Handling it, Priya is 22 years old and she's been here 3 weeks. Daniel paused. The guest's name is Constance Aldridge. A silence. That's a common enough. She owns the hotel, Vincent. The words landed in the small office, like something dropped from a height. Vincent looked up from the screen. His expression hadn't reorganized itself yet. It was still in the process of understanding what the next few minutes were going to cost him. She can't be, She comes anonymously. It's in the acquisition briefing. I read it. Did you read it? Daniel didn't wait for the answer. He left. He walked back into the lobby, crossed to the window, crouched down slightly so that he was speaking at eye level with the woman in the chair, Miss Aldridge. His voice was quiet. I'm so sorry. I'm Daniel Chen, guest experience manager. I wasn't at the desk when you arrived, and I should have been. Please allow me to take you to your room personally. Constance looked at him. She capped her pen. Has the check-in issue been resolved? Yes, completely. Your reservation is confirmed. The payment processed correctly 3 weeks ago, and room 1401 is ready. He paused. It has been ready since 2 o'clock. She studied him for a moment. Then she picked up her bag and stood. Thank you, Daniel. She said it simply. Not warmly, not coldly. The way you say it when you mean it and nothing more. They walked together toward the elevators. As they passed the front desk, Vincent stepped out from the side corridor. His posture had rearranged itself into something formal and slightly desperate. Mrs. Aldridge, I want to apologize for any inconvenience. I wasn't aware. Constance stopped. She turned to look at him with the full attention of someone who is about to say something they have thought carefully about. I know you weren't aware, she said. That's the problem, isn't it? Vincent opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You weren't aware of who I was, so you decided who I was. And you made that decision based on my coat and my bag, and the fact that I'm old, and I didn't arrive in a car with someone carrying things for me. She didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. That is exactly the kind of decision I built this company to prevent. The lobby had quieted around them. Not silent. There was still the piano from upstairs. Still the soft hum of check-ins and rolling luggage, but the 3 people within earshot had stopped moving. Priya at the front desk, the bellhop near the revolving door. A couple paused near the lounge entrance. Nobody said anything. Constance turned back to Daniel. Room 1401, you said? Yes, I'll take you up. They walked to the elevator. She didn't look back. Vincent stood where she had left him, in the middle of his own lobby, with his hands at his sides and absolutely nowhere to put them. 14 floors up. Daniel opened the door to 1401 and stood back. The room was everything the executive collection was supposed to be. Floor-to-ceiling windows facing the lake. The city stretching south in its Friday evening glow. Lights beginning to come up against the early dark. A writing desk beneath the windows with a clean lamp and a leather chair. Constance set her bag on the luggage stand and walked to the window. Below, the lake was flat and dark. A freighter moved slowly across the far horizon, its running lights steady and small. The kind of sight her husband had always loved. He said it looked like the city was measuring itself against something bigger and deciding to be humble about it. She put her hand flat on the glass, just for a moment. Then she went to the desk, opened her notebook, and kept writing. She had been writing since the train. She wrote the time she arrived at the lobby. The words Vincent used, the way. The man with the expensive jacket was waved through while she waited. The expression on Priya's face, caught, uncertain, wanting to say something and not knowing how. She wrote every detail with the same steady hand she'd been using since 1989. David had told her to always keep a record because memory is selective and paperwork is not. At 8:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. A text from Helen. You okay? Eat something, love you. She typed back. Ate, on the train. Soup. Stop worrying. Love you more. She set the phone face down on the desk and kept writing. Please. 3 floors below in the management office, Daniel Chen was on the phone with the group's corporate operations director. He spoke quietly and precisely. He described the check-in sequence from arrival to elevator. He named every moment. He did not soften anything, because Daniel was the kind of person who understood that the time for softening had passed the moment Constance Aldridge sat down in that chair by the window and took out her notebook. Vincent sat across the desk from him, saying nothing. He had the look of a man watching his own choices replay in slow motion. He was 41 years old. He had been in hotel management for 16 years. He had always believed that reading a guest correctly in the first 30 seconds was a skill, an efficiency, even. He had never once considered that the skill he was so proud of was actually a bias he had never bothered to examine. He was beginning to consider it now. But considering it now in this room was 16 years too late for a great number of people. Because Vincent Colworth had not done this only once. 7 months earlier, a retired Cree schoolteacher named Albert had arrived at a Muskoka resort under the Aldridge portfolio, a different property, different province, and been told by a front desk supervisor that the rate he'd booked was unavailable and he'd need to take a smaller room at the same price. He had accepted this quietly, not complained. He had simply never returned, and when the exit survey arrived in his inbox, he'd left the response box blank because he had spent 68 years learning that the blank box was safer. The survey went unread. 3 months ago, a Filipino-Canadian woman in her late 60s had tried to use the restaurant at the Hamilton property for a family lunch. The host had seated her group near the kitchen, the worst table in the room, while tables with clear sightlines to the waterfront sat empty. Her granddaughter had said something. The woman had said, "Leave it." Sweetheart. They had eaten their lunch listening to the kitchen door swing. No complaint filed, no record anywhere. These things had happened inside the Aldridge Group's walls, on Constance Aldridge's properties, with her name on the building, and nobody had thought to tell her. Not because the staff didn't know, because the culture had not made it safe to say so. Because the systems designed to catch these moments were built for data, not dignity. She was going to change that. She already knew it. She had known it for 2 hours. The investigation began Monday morning. Constance's assistant, a methodical woman named Fran, who had worked with her for 14 years at corporate headquarters in Mississauga at 7 a.m., with a coffee, a printed report, and the expression of someone who has read the preliminary notes and is not surprised, and also is. By 9, the executive team was assembled. Operations, legal, human resources, the head of guest experience for the entire group, a man from Vancouver who took the first flight out. Daniel Chen's account was the first document on the table. 7 pages, time-stamped, clear. The hotel's CCTV footage was reviewed. The lobby sequence, Constance's arrival, Vincent's dismissal, the moment the man with the expensive jacket was waved through, was on screen by 10 a.m. Nobody in that room said a word for 40 seconds after it finished playing. Vincent's personnel file came next. 6 years with the group, counting his time in Calgary. 3 letters of commendation for revenue performance. 2 anonymous staff feedback submissions describing a manager who was, in the phrasing one person had carefully chosen, more welcoming towards some guests than others. HR had reviewed these. They had been filed. Nothing had followed. Legal counsel, a woman named Sandra who had worked in employment and hospitality law for 20 years, read those submissions twice. Then she put them down on the table in a way that made it clear she had come to a conclusion. "These are not ambiguous," she said. "These are 3 years of warning." The room was quiet. "We filed them," said the HR director. "Filing is not acting," Sandra said. "A system that receives information and does not respond is not a safety net. It's a drawer." Constance was not in the room. She was on the 14th floor, at her writing desk, answering emails and watching the lake. She had made herself available for a call at 2 p.m. and said she trusted the team to begin without her. The team spent 4 hours doing what teams do when they finally understand that the problem is not a person, but a pattern. They pulled complaint records from all 7 properties. They cross-referenced exit survey scores, identified 3 locations where anonymous guest satisfaction scores had declined in the evenings, and on weekends, the shifts with less senior oversight, and 1 property in Kingston where staff turnover in the first 6 months of employment was running at twice the group average. They found what they had not been looking for, because they had not been looking. Vincent Colworth was suspended from duty, pending a formal review, by 2 o'clock that afternoon. A member of the operations team flew in from Ottawa to manage the Harrington Grand. Priya, the young concierge who had stood at her keyboard and not spoken, was asked if she wanted to provide a statement. She said yes. She wrote 2 pages. Her hands shook slightly when she handed them over. At the bottom she had written, "I wanted to say something. I didn't know how. I think about that a lot." The operations director read that line and circled it. On Tuesday morning, Daniel received a call from Fran. She asked him to come to a meeting in Mississauga on Wednesday. She said Constance would be there. He drove 2 hours with his hands steady on the wheel and his stomach not quite as steady. Constance opened the meeting by thanking the team. Not with a speech. With 2 sentences. "You did the work quickly and honestly. That tells me something good about this organization that I intend to build on." Then she talked about Albert, the retired schoolteacher. She talked about the woman in Hamilton and the kitchen door. She had not known their names when she walked into the Harrington Grand on Friday. She knew them now, because the review had surfaced exit survey fragments in staff memory, and 1 comment card that had been placed in a physical box at the Hamilton property and not digitized since the previous April. These people had no title, she said. No notebook. No position. They were guests in our hotels who were made to feel less than that. They left quietly because they had learned that leaving quietly was the safest response to being disrespected. I want to understand how that became the norm, and I want to change it. She laid out what would happen next. A guest advocacy line, anonymous and independent of property management, active across all 7 locations within 60 days. A revised staff training program built around a single principle she had written herself. You do not need to know who someone is to treat them well. You need only to know who you are. A formal escalation process for discrimination complaints, with a mandatory response timeline and quarterly reporting to the board. The program did not have a name yet. Someone on the communications team suggested calling it the Aldridge Standard. Constance shook her head. "It shouldn't need my name on it," she said. "It should just be how we do things." The name was dropped. The program kept everything else. Vincent Colworth's employment was terminated at the end of the formal review period, 6 weeks after the incident. The investigation had documented a pattern of differential treatment spanning his tenure at 2 Aldridge properties. 3 former guests were contacted. 2 agreed to speak with the team. 1. A man in his 70s who had been turned away from a suite in Calgary and told his preferred room was unavailable, despite it appearing on the booking system as open, said simply, "I assumed they just didn't like the look of me. I've been assuming that my whole life. It's exhausting." Sandra's legal team handled the follow-up. 2 resolutions were reached. 1 case was referred to the Ontario Human Rights Commission. The union representing hotel management staff was notified of the termination grounds. There was a brief discussion. The union representative reviewed the CCTV footage. He asked for time to speak with his members. He called back the following morning and said the union would not contest the termination. Nobody was surprised. Daniel Chen was appointed interim guest experience director for the Harrington Grand while a permanent search began. He was not told this because of what had happened on Friday. He was told this because he had read the acquisition briefing, he had noticed the guest at the window, and he had acted. On his first day in the role, he called a staff meeting, all shifts, all departments. He stood at the front of the conference room on the mezzanine level and said what he had to say in under 5 minutes. A guest came through our door last week and was made to feel like she didn't belong here. Do you two understand that what happened to her happens to people in this lobby every day? Not with luggage, not with confrontations, quietly, in the way someone is spoken to or not spoken to, where they're directed to stand, in whether someone smiles or doesn't. We are going to be the team that changes that. Starting now. Starting with the person who walks in next. Priya was in the third row. She didn't look at her keyboard this time. And then there is Constance. She still takes the train. She still books through the standard portal under her own name, with no advance notice and no entourage. She still carries the green canvas holdall that has been on 3 continents and smells faintly of cedar, because she keeps a block of it tucked in the front pocket. For no reason she could clearly explain, except that her husband, David, used to say it made things last longer. Room 1401 has a crack in the crown molding above the bathroom door. She noted it on Saturday morning and reported it to the maintenance log. Not because it was significant, but because the point of paying attention is to actually pay attention, even when it's small. The notebook she was writing in that Friday night is full now. She started a new one. Same brand, spiral-bound, 70 pages. Brown cover. The first line reads, November. Toronto. This is what I saw, what I did about it. She flies to Vancouver next month. The Aldridge Group's westernmost property. New general manager, first year in the role. She'll take a cab from the airport, pay with a regular card, check in at the front desk like anyone else. She'll be watching her, not because she needs to be needed, not because she doesn't trust the people she's hired, but because a hotel, any organization that asks people to trust it with their comfort and their dignity, has to be held accountable by someone willing to experience it from the inside. Because she learned a long time ago that the gap between the organization you think you're running and the one that actually exists gets measured in the small, quiet moments, in the way a person is spoken to when no one important is watching. She is always watching. She will always be the one who took notes. There's a question I want to leave you with, and I want you to sit with it honestly. Have you ever been standing at a counter, or a desk, or in a room, and felt the temperature drop? Felt the moment when someone looked at you and decided, before you said a single word, that you didn't quite belong there? And have you ever been on the other side? The one doing the looking? The one who told yourself you were just being efficient, just reading the room, just using your judgment? We talk about disrespect like it's always loud, like it has to involve a raised voice or a bag thrown on the floor. But the version that does the most damage is quieter than that. It's the glance that slides past someone, the redirect to a lesser option, the service that arrives slower, the smile that doesn't quite arrive at all. It happens in hotels and hospitals and grocery lines and offices and school hallways. Most of the time, the person on the receiving end absorbs it in silence because they've learned that speaking up costs more than it returns. Constance Aldridge had the power to do something. Most people in that lobby chair didn't. That's not their failure. That's ours. All of ours. What would you have done? Would you have stepped aside quietly? Would you have spoken? Would you have been Daniel, who recognized what he saw and moved? And drop your answer in the comments. I mean it. I want to hear where you'd have been in that story. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit like if you believe dignity isn't a privilege, and subscribe so you're here for the next one. Because respect costs nothing, but the bill for disrespect, that one always finds its way back to the door.